So as a peacemaker, I'm ready to forgive them all, right? I know all of them are carrying sins. And part of what I do, and I hope you get this from me, is I share my sin and my pain with you freely. You know what I mean? It's like I don't pretend to be somebody else. I'm just me. You know what I mean? Ugly, happy, terrible. I hope sometimes blessed. You know what I mean? Grateful. I'm always grateful. I never been in a moment where I wasn't grateful since 1988.
I'm Olivia Clementine, and this is Love and Liberation. Today, our guest is Reverend Kalani Souza. Reverend Kalani is a gifted storyteller, musician, performer, poet, philosopher, priest, political satirist, and peacemaker. A Hawaiian practitioner and cross-cultural facilitator, he has experience in promoting social justice through conflict resolution. He is a messenger of integration and collaboration in a world normally rife with exclusion, oppression, and hopelessness. His work in behavior modification research, leadership, team building, and political strategy gives him generous insights into group dynamics and systems of governance. Kalani is a recognized traditional practitioner of Native Hawaiian and Pacific Island culture and licensed to practice traditional religion and ceremony. Kalani is the founding executive director of Olahana that works with coastal and indigenous communities to build capacity around food, energy, water, and knowledge systems. Thank you so much for meeting. I'm so grateful.
Oh no, man! I was looking forward to this. Sorry, we had to change the time this morning.
It's no problem. Somebody invented clocks, anyways. It's not like we've always had them.
Right? That's so cool. I took my watch off because I used to wear one.
Yeah.
And I think it was 1976. And that was it. I hadn't put a watch on since then.
Did you use an alarm in the morning? No.
I wake up at about 4:15 to 4:30 every morning, just always have. And I like waking up at that time. Hawaiians say pilipuka. That's the troubled hole, that little bit in the consciousness. Now, the way it was described to me by my grandfather is the cosmic energy is moving towards the planet, and on it comes this energy of creation through the Oort cloud, towards our star, which is in a very, very far away place in the universe. We're not like downtown. If this is Manhattan, we're in Jersey. You know what I mean? Over there, Staten Island is just a little bit down south and a little off to the corner, Yeah. But he said the sun and the solar wind, the sun is putting out so much information, energy, and force, coming our way, that the only time you receive the great galactic energy is at that between 12 midnight and sunrise, as the planet is spinning on the backside away from the sun, and the magnetic field creates this long alleyway up which the information, the cosmic energy is coming, and it hits the earth in those nighttime hours around 2 to 4 in the morning. He said that's why that time of morning is kind of that restlessness and weird stuff happens, right? And he used to tell me the witching hour is actually 3 to 4 in the morning. That's when the cosmic energy is landing. So Po, that window is called a puka in Polynesian. And pili is short for our word pilikia, which means trouble. So it's the hole through which the trouble comes in, right, on the back end. So we call that 2 hours of time pilipuka, right? The trouble hole, right? It's like right there. And right at the end of pilipuka, my grandfather said that's when the messages are coming from the ancestral worlds about 4:30 in the morning. 5, like just before sunrise, right? The Pava, those better angels of creation are showing up, right? That kind of inspiration you get in the morning. So ever since I was a kid, I just always wake up then, which is really, really bad if you're a rock and roll musician.
Do you go to bed early, or does it not matter? You just always.
It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I could go to sleep at 8, or I could go to sleep at 2 in the morning, and I'm still up at the same time. It reminds me of Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. It's like every morning I open my eyes and it's that same time in the morning and we're going, and I have a little ritual. I go outside and I always look for the grandmother moon. I always look for my grandmother moon. That's like the first thing, and like where she is. And then I get ready for the grandfather sun. It's an interesting thing, the Essenes, the old Hebrew custom. They're Bedouins, all of them are desert people, right? At some point way back when. But they understood greatly the sacredness of the earth mother, of the sky father, of the grandfather sun, of the grandmother moon. And now we're talking about, old Aramaic Jews who are living this way, right? Who are talking about grandmother moon, grandfather sun, right? Grandmother moon running their clock the way the year goes. They're following the moon and the moon cycles, and the same as the Polynesians, right? Same customs that you find in the old indigenous world of knowing that we have this deep familial relationship to the world around us, and it's familial. It's like, deeply connected from the same DNA, the same stuff, it's like impacting our worlds. And they knew this. I mean, it's in the writings of the Essenes in Masada. You see, you have to respect the earth. That was their big beef with the Romans, right? Is that they weren't doing that, right? It's like they weren't living by the natural law. Seems like the demands, the challenges, they haven't changed all that much, in 2,500 years, right? It's like, it's the same pressure. I can harken back to 1950 and find people talking about it the way we're talking about it in 2007. The corporatocracy, the great enemy, the education system, the oppression of politics, all of that. And yet, we still listen to crying babies, right? In the morning, and see old people on the bench watching a sunset and wonder how many more for me, right? It's like all these things are so human, it's like, wow. It's like, how come we don't celebrate and dance the small sea of culture, the little thing that makes us so much the same. It's like the way a mother will look at her child when the child is misbehaving in public, right? And the child knows it, right? It's like the child goes, oh, like the child can tell mom is looking at the child that says, wait till we're alone, right? It doesn't matter if mom is, Hebrew or Athabascan or, or Tibetan or Swahili. It's like the look on mom's face is exactly the same, right? It's like so true. Every village and all the rest of us who witness that look, we all instantly know what it means. It's like, right, it doesn't matter what culture, what language, what economic station, we all go, ooh. Oh, that baby, you shouldn't have gone there. You should not have gone there. But it's like we all have that personal experience, and we don't look at that enough. Wow, that's the sacredness of it. You know, the way a father looks at his wife and the children at the dinner table when he comes home from the field, from the war, from the bank, you know, from the church. It doesn't matter from where. That look is going to be the same. You know, you could see it, certain kind of contentment, a little bit of worry, you know, all of that, all wrapped up in a moment, you know.
Yeah, he feels like the significance of slowing down.
To the moment. And I will give exception to Eckhart Tolle. Okay, I don't think it's about the Calvinists. Let's experience the now and see how we can make money off of this. It's like, no, it's more like the real moment, you know, the real.
And even just what you're sharing too, like the real moment of even like the child, the mother being upset with the child, and like the
right.
that, not like everything is joyful and perfect, but like
no, all of that is beautifully the small sea of culture.
Yeah.
Right, the actual human experience, right? I notice when I talk about it like this with anybody, everybody's like, oh yeah, this is who we are. And then we're going to put on a green and red flag and pretend we're something else. And there's the blue flag over there, and there's a guy with the yellow and black flag. And it's so simple to be human, right? It involves the stolen kiss at 14, right? It involves the stolen money from mom's dresser, right? It involves the cheating on the test. It involves, in every culture, it involves all of that, stretching to find out who you are. How much sin can you hold?
Wow.
Before it breaks you, before you can no longer do it. You know what I mean? Before I cannot lie anymore. You know, that's what happens. Yeah. We all naturally lie out of self-preservation, and then we all have this varying scale where we reach a point where we can't do it anymore.
How much sin can we hold? It's like you've allowed sin, the humanness of sin, to be a practice in a way by even just saying that sentence.
Exactly. You know, and that's the whole point. Otherwise, what's the point of forgiveness?
So true.
Right? It's like, hey, what are we working on here, babies?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I always love the story of the wedding, you know, in scripture. Hey, you know, as in a scene, as a Jew, it's the responsibility of the groom to provide the alcohol at the wedding banquet. So when Mary says to Joshua, to Jesus, hey, you know, what are we going to do, son? The guests don't have any wine to drink. And he says, don't worry, got it down. You know, water into wine. Hey, let them drink up. Here we go. Why is it Joshua's problem? Why is it Mary's problem that there's no wine for the guests? Right? All these things that are so clearly there, right? That we should all, it's because it's human. Right? Here's the culture. The groom is responsible for the wine. Oh, that's a normal human thing to do at a party, but we don't ever talk about that in scripture. Well, why would Mary ask her son? Oh, that's right, it's his wedding.
You've studied like every religion. You seem to have time to delve into so many modalities. It's like in the modern world, people think they don't have time for a single thing, and then there's you who's like does 20 different things fully.
I get bored. You know, my grandfather, he told me one time, he says, I was young, I was about 8. He says to me, he says, nothing is sacred. Everything is sacred. And then he walks off. And I'm like, well, what? Right? I'm sitting there. We're about to go to church, right? And my mom, she's really big on me being a Catholic priest. She was the only one. She got over it. You know, so the rest of them were not big on that. They were like, nah, not this kid. You know, so my grandfather was getting ready to go to church with me, and he wanted to make sure I wasn't falling under that spell. You know, the one with the incense and the robes and the smoke and the adoration. And, oh, really? Did he just float in on a beam of light? You know, all of that when you're 7 and 8 and
Totally.
you're watching the show, right? It's a show. And that really hit me, you know, nothing sacred, everything sacred. And he had been teaching me this lesson, but not like the way it hit me then. And the lesson was like this, like one of the things he said to me was, he said, hey boy, you know, that's how he used to talk to me. Hey boy. And I always knew he was being serious when he did that boy thing, right? I was like, oh, something is coming, you know? And he said, hey boy, the moon is always half in shadow. Right? And I'm like, what are you talking about, old man? You know, the way you do when you're like young. And I'm looking at the moon and I'm thinking, no, it's not. Right? Sometimes yeah, and then sometimes not, and then sometimes yeah, and then sometimes not. And then, of course, you know, we're learning about the movement and shadow and light and circulating objects. And then I'm getting it, right? And then it's about 2 years later, right? And I bring up the thing about the moon. And he says, no. It only looks like it's going through phases because of the position you're standing in. My perspective on the moon is changing. Hence, I think it's full, right? Hence, I think it's a quarter, or, you know, waning or waxing based on my position. He said, yeah, just like every relationship in the village, huh? And walks off. Always half in shadow, right? Every human you meet, always half in shadow. They just look like they're good or evil, you know, based on your particular perspective at the moment. But really, they were capable of either. Really, they were promised both. Right? And now they're going to define themselves, right? Now they're going to choose, you know, their distance from one frame of reference to the other, right? And we're going to call that their life, right? They, you know, what they experience in this life. They're, you know, in some disciplines we'll call it, you know, their dogma, right? In other disciplines, they'll say, well, their karma from the past dogmas affecting their, you know, and it's like, ooh, you know, now we're cascading. And then I'll add to it multiplicities of interdimensional spatiality. So now suddenly we're spherical, right? And a countless myriad of experiences are happening off each one of my experiences. And am I at the soul level 100% in each one of those experiences? Or have you and I sliced off and we're having this one bifurcated, you know, trifurcated experience that the rest are not having? And so I see what you mean. Seeing the universe like this, how could I not want to experience it all, right? How could I not want to, like, and it's so weird because if somebody asks me what ice cream I want to eat, and you can ask my friends this, I eat just vanilla and chocolate. Not vanilla or chocolate, vanilla and chocolate together. And that's the only flavor I eat. I don't actually eat all the other flavors, but I've tried them all. Very predictable. And in that predictability, you could say I'm really spontaneous. Having the cosmology, the view of that, yeah, makes me think that I never wanted to. This is why I didn't even get a BA. Right, I didn't want to be pigeonholed. 12 years of going to university, but no pigeonhole. You know what I mean? It's like, wait a minute. I want to be interdisciplinary in a real way.
Yeah.
I don't want to be reductionist about the way I'm thinking about something or reviewing it. And again, my grandfather, right? My grandfather said, boy, if you cannot figure your way out of something, go further in. So of course, right, the solution must be in deeper, right? I must immerse myself in the experience, trust in my ability, and trust in the benevolence, I think, of the experience I'm having. And I get that I could have the shadow experience, right? I get that I could have the malevolent experience. If the glass, if it's half empty, then you're always wondering, A, who drank my water? Right? But if the glass is half full, then the issue of thirst does not arise. Right? I look down, it's half full, no problem. Let's keep going, right? It's like, right? There's no competitive.
Have a full glass anymore.
Right. Who has a full glass?
Yeah.
And why would you want one, right? A Zen monk or a Taoist priest, the minute it's full, would tip it over. He would know that the value of the glass is that it's empty and can hold more, right? It's like if it's full, the glass has no value anymore, right? It's like, so share, spread, give, gift what is in the glass, give it away, give it away, give it away. That's what my grandfather told me. He said, we don't know how it works, boy, but you give it away and it comes back to you. You know, it's like this thing. It's like reciprocation. It's like you can give it and it will return to you. If you try to hold it, it will be taken from you. You know what I mean? He said, everything except your time. Each of us, we have only so many sunrises, only so many sunsets, and we don't know what that number is. You know, once you give your time away, it's gone. You know, it will not return to you. Your time is the only thing that seems to march ever onward without reciprocation. So my grandfather, he said, be careful who you spend your time with. You know what I mean? So thank you for this time with you, because this is important. It's like a timeout, right? We get to talk like as two human beings about like really weird and interesting shit, you know? You know, meaning the stuff that makes us, the stuff that is us, right? The things that I don't have to do a report, you know what I mean, and turn in a white paper about anything we might theoretically discuss, right? It's like we can just talk about it.
Who knows? Maybe afterwards I'll be like, so did you write me a paper about Don't worry, I won't.
I was at AGU in DC, right? That's the American Geophysical Union. So like 27,000 academic science geeks running around in one place, everybody throwing up posters. And, you know, I loved it. Spent the whole time running up and down, reading, you know, 27,000 posters. Like, I want to know if somebody's got a new and different idea out there. And that's part of what you were talking about, right? I think it's a curiosity. You know, I have an inquisitive nature. And I think that kind of curiosity or inquisition oh, I hate to use the word inquisition, oops, it went really bad with the programs for a couple 300 years. But, the idea of wanting to know, wanting to relate, not just know, but go like, this is how I relate to that. This is what it means to me, and hopefully what I mean to this. It's that idea, that drive, it overwhelms me. It's like, I just want to know.
In gratitude to our listeners and to support the making of this podcast, we want to let you know that you receive 10% off our shop of online courses and botanical delights. Visit oliviaclementine.com and at checkout, enter the code LOVE and LIBERATION for a discount. Thank you again for your support. Now back to our conversation. You've done incredible work around peacemaking with people, and it's so needed right now, right? Like, for each of us to learn how to be peacemakers in our communities and in our greater world, especially seeing such a big divide. And I wanted to just say, because you taught conflict resolution at the University of Hawaii. You're on the Committee for Intense Public Conflict of the Association for Conflict Resolution. And you served as one of 2 Hawaiians in the Native Network, which is a group of 450 peacemakers on the Department of the Interior. So not only do you have, just as a person, you're interested in relating and depth, but you've been doing this for large groups of people and policymakers. And yeah, I just love to hear just from you, because I do think one of the biggest poverties, like Mother Teresa has said, is, and a lot of other people, is loneliness. We're in a culture of not knowing how to connect and not knowing how to bridge the sameness that you were speaking of in the beginning. And if you could even just share some things that we can do to create a bridge between each other, whether it's in the moment, with another, or just in our larger state of mind of how can we see the sameness?
I'm going to set something up here.
You do it.
Okay, so me, I like the number 4, and I like it when it's twice and it's 4 and 4 and it loops back on itself. And I just want to toss it in because I like symmetry that way. And I think about the 4 seasons and the 4 directions and the 4 dimensions that we happen to exist in, right? The 3 dimensions of presence and the time as the 4th dimension, right? As this forward movement, the one we were talking about that you cannot get back. And I see the 5th dimension and beyond, expanding beyond me into the spiritual world. So I see all of that. But around what I do physically, what I am, how I exist in the universe today, who is Kalani, of the lifetimes I'm playing out on this planet versus others. I think of the 4 directions, and I think of the symmetry of the number 4, and squared by squared. And so I'm going to talk about these things like that in the 4 directions, right? So I want to set that up and apologize by saying that's the framework I'm using. So everybody dance with me. Yeah. So maybe the doctrine of discovery is an ancestral thought, from our relative safety 680 years in the future. We can look back and say, ooh, that was an erroneous idea. Sorry, Pope, you don't actually get to go around go, do you know God? Do you have a flag? I'm sorry, you're mine now. Bad thinking, doctrine of discovery. Maybe that's elemental. It's the air and it's in the north and it's ancestral and it's our past. And maybe directly opposite it in the south, in the element of water, it is the doctrine of recognition, the doctrine of protocol. In fact, that human beings like we were talking about at the kitchen table with the mother and the young baby, we can recognize that these are, the Arawaks are humans, right? Columbus doesn't need to be chopping off hands and gathering gold. And they don't need to worship the sacred stranger, and so don't attack him no matter how horrible he is, right? So everybody's got bad belief systems, right? And maybe rather than oppose them, we can simply say this was an old way of knowing that we now recognize is compromised, right? And in that spirit of compromise, we'd like to collaborate on building these deeper relationships. And maybe in the East is the doctrine of creation, and it's the verdancy and the feminine and the moon and the rising greenness and, you know, the freshness of the earth and the element of the earth mother and the grounding. And maybe in the West is the element of fire and the masculine, you know, and the setting sun and the destructiveness and the death and the, you know, the doctrine of separation, the one we're not good at. You know what I mean? Where we take our gold to the grave instead of passing our gifts on to the next generations and the next generations to come. And maybe there's learning that has to happen, right? All around the wheel, right? It's like, so there's this dance that's still ongoing. And maybe when we start to look at the world as a less bifurcated us and them, but more of a circuitous, seasonal, we're moving through these phases of our lives, these doctrines, like a sine wave, right? Moving, cresting and moving in a circle, like a carousel animal riding up and down and seeming to move ever onward, but actually being rather circuitous about their experience. And if that's the case, then how does that drive us to a deeper relational self-inspection? And maybe it looks like this, that our first relationship in the North is the relationship with the cosmos, with the way we think things are formed and framed. Who are our gods, right? How do we think it was created? The great big blue bull, or the 8-armed dancing Shiva, or the banded snake, or the, you know, or the old guy pointing at the other guy, you know, or the fertile goddess with the sown fields, or the hind king, or a myriad of cosmologies, you know, that all somehow enable the individual human to feel that they're part of the wave. The particle becomes part of the wave as it's moving along this dance, you know what I mean, that is called a life upon a life upon a life, you know. And this first relationship, the cosmos, is the one that is shaped by culture and framework, by our own awareness coming to it. And the second relationship in the East, the verdancy, the feminine, is the relationship with the environment, with the surround, with the living world that we're born into. And that's different from cosmology. Now it's the plants, the air, the cold, the heat, the things that impact our bodies, that are the negotiable relationships that help us survive or lead to our demise. You know, the real mothering, the real earth mother, that real substantial element, you know. And maybe that the South becomes the doctrine of society, right? So we got the cosmos in the North, the environment in the East, society and humans and people and laws. Who are you as you relate to other humans? And why is this unique and different in the peacekeeping world and the conflict world? Humans seem to be uniquely positioned to ignore the laws of the second world, the natural world, that every other part of life seems to respond so well to. We seem to uniquely be able to ignore those laws and to do something so heinous as to really need contemplative forgiveness. Not, hey, the gazelle got run down by the lion and oh boy, I guess there's breakfast for the kids. Come on, cubs. Not that kind of relational interaction, but one, et tu, Brute, right? So that's that third defining relationship. And the fourth one, the most critical one, the relationship with the self. Who are you as you make your relationships, your three relationships with the cosmos, with the environment, with the other humans? Who are you? Were you John Wayne Gacy? Were you Mother Teresa? Were you both? It's like the moon is always half in shadow, right? So as a peacemaker, I'm ready to forgive them all, right? I know all of them are carrying sins. And part of what I do, and I hope you get this from me, is I share my sin and my pain with you freely. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't pretend to be somebody else. I'm just me. You know what I mean? Ugly, happy, terrible. I hope sometimes blessed. You know what I mean? Grateful. I'm always grateful. I never been in a moment where I wasn't grateful since 1988. I remember the day exactly when I got grateful. Yeah, and I've never not been grateful since then. It's weird. So like I was saying, it's evolution, I think, happens like this, the same way it happens with the soul. Everything is moving along, fitting in the minutia nicely, and then suddenly there's a giant mutation. And then everything mutates forward. And then what works hangs around and what doesn't falls away, right? Because the new mutation makes it impossible for the old reality to survive. So only the things that adapt to the new reality manage to hang on, or as Darwin would say, the survival of the fittest, the one that fit in. That's the one that makes it. The one that didn't fit, oops, sorry. We see that in the evolutionary record. Well, if evolution, physical mutations, and generation for growth have that arcing pattern of the wave, like a tidal wave surging forward, and then we see what sticks, and settles down into a nice rhythm and then surges forward again, then why wouldn't we social, emotionally, or spiritually be having the same growth pattern? Why wouldn't we? What we see in the Beltway today, what we see challenging us at the world arena, is simply that mutation stage, right? We're at this place now where all of us have to rise up. You know what I mean? It's like either our better or our worse nature will rise up, right? And is coming to this moment. And so hey, man, I don't think anybody's drinking my water. I'm ready for this moment. You know what I mean? It's like I want to see us grow up, as Arthur C. Clarke said a long time ago. I'm ready for the childhood zen.
Yeah.
I'm ready for us to stop being selfish monkeys. You know what I mean? We need to get it together here.
Yeah. I mean, you do so much work with climate change, so obviously, and you work with NOAA and, all these agencies that are really there, like seeing the slight variations of temperature and major destruction and like, there's just so much consumptive, obviously, behavior and ignorance, and getting to know you a little bit, like your attitude is so real And also you're there, like you're a part of this world, like the work you're doing, you're in it. You're not like kind of talking about it, but not actually engaged.
Oh, thank you, sister. I keep telling some of my compatriots we can't intellectualize this in academic papers. At some point, you
Yeah,
got to walk out there and do something, man. It's like,
it's so true. And like
it's
I know for
important.
many of us, we get complacent because it's so overwhelming, especially if you're just kind of like, well, where do I even begin, right? To
Right, right,
help in some way. And
right.
do you have thoughts on that of like what we can do to, because I know so many of us are obviously concerned with climate change, and it feels like the way our culture is designed, it goes against all common
Right.
sense. Like just
This is all true. Everything you're saying is true. And are we at a heinous moment? Absolutely.
yeah,
And
yeah,
right, are we, like institutionally lined up against success? Yes. And it's like, does it seem like the educated, empowered portion of society is apathetic and not responding in a timely fashion? Yes, 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 definitely.
yeah.
So is it a challenge? Oh boy, it's like, right. So
The shadow, the light and the dark.
right. So we have to find a way to do upreach and outreach, which I'm trying my damnedest, and like training a bunch of other young people to get out there and talk about this in a real way, right? About what we're really doing. And it has to do with food systems, energy systems. Now, here's the hard part. It also has to do with the fact that this is a naturally occurring solar event, meaning it's within the solar system. So it's, I'm pretty sure our cars aren't impacting the Arctic Circle on Neptune. It's like there's all kinds of stuff going on that is not attributed to human behavior. But the fact is, we're exacerbating our situation here greatly. Have human beings developed a great track record for doing the responsible thing? I don't think so. I think if we actually pour back over our literature, we're rather buffoonish. We act like buffoons for the most part, particularly when there's somebody of the opposite attraction, if you know what I mean. And it's because I don't want to genderize it. I want to say, whenever humans are around somebody they're attracted to, boy, do they get goofy. I don't know if that's a biological mechanism to keep the population down, or, or what happened there, but it certainly occurs. We can see that morally, apparently access and education have very little to do with behavioral consequences, right? Because really highly intelligent, highly successful people will do the damnedest things in a moment, So what is that then? Why do we behave badly? Is it our initiatory experience? Is it that humans are actually having a mock experience? Could it be that our frameworks create the semblance of success and achievement when really at our basis, deepest core, where we're relational, where our relationship to the cosmos matters, we have barely scratched the surface, and deep inside, all of us are scared little children, that we're not good enough, that we'll never measure up, that no one will actually love us, so we better collect all these toys and hold them off, because if we got a lot of toys, then people will like us, and all this. And is that a deep transpersonal experience? Yes. And do we address the transpersonal in our awareness of both economics? No, never in economics, right? Or our societal relation? Well, we do, but we try to be more clinical about it. We'll create laws. And, so there's this real disingenuousness when it comes to dealing with the human condition. And yet, every conflict I've ever dealt with has come down to that deeply transpersonal moment where the human being realizes that they have a choice, that they're always half in shadow. And that glass, it's going to be like that, right? And it's like it's either going to be half full or half empty. And it's a shitty moment, but here we are, right? And you got to decide that about yourself. And then you got to live with your decision. If you're a glass half empty girl, and then party on, bitch about every damn thing till the end of the road. You know what I mean? But know that about yourself.
Yeah.
And then try to contribute to society in the best way you can, knowing that about yourself, right? So either way, knowing yourself leads to a more, they would say in Bhutan, a more contented life, which could be misconstrued as happiness. You know what I mean? Contentment.
Right.
The fact is, if you don't know nothing about an iPhone, you're pretty content until you find out about an iPhone. Right? Then you're not content. By the way, I don't have an iPhone.
You don't have an iPhone? No watch since 77, no iPhone.
No iPhone, no.
I bet that helps you have more time in your life.
I got all the time I need, apparently. And my wife, Julie, she's always screaming, "Oh, where do you find the time for us ever?" And I'm like, well, time, once you spend it, it's gone forever. You know what I mean? So I not only want to spend all my time, I want to spend everybody else's time. I want to spend as much time as I can. I want to overdraw when it comes to the time thing. I hope I die with a deficit.
That's so good. I love that. I love that you want to spend everyone's time too.
Yeah, I can think of things we can all do. And I really do expect the best from the human race. I really do think that we're naturally compassionate. We're kind of normally collaborative. Even the crusty, grinchy ones, even them I like. I've rarely met a human being that I didn't want to spend time with. It's happened over the 63 years, but it was pretty rare. And less than a handful, less than 5. Right. So I know it's possible to really enjoy the human race, so I'm always sympathetic when I see folks who look really alone. You know what I'm talking about? You can tell they're journeying through this world alone. And you remarked on that. I can think of no greater lie than the one we tell ourselves when we say we're alone. Just not true. I know for some people they wish it was true, but it's just not. We're never alone. And I've grown to become okay with that. I wasn't okay with it when I was younger. I always wanted to be alone. Now I realize I never wanted to be alone. I always wanted to actually be deeply in relationship. And there's so much more rewarding. You know what I mean? I feel the rewards at the end of the day. If I can help someone, I had a friend, Tenzin Ganto, the Dalai Lama, they call him. I don't think he calls himself that. But, anyway, so Tenzin, he would say to you, man, if you could just do one thing to help somebody, just one thing, then your whole ride is worthwhile. And so I know a lot of us, we think of ourselves as insignificant, down and out. I know I used to, when I was young, think I was insignificant. I changed that at 14. After that, it's like, bang, significance, baby. It's like just, each of us has been gifted as much as the snowflake, as much as the algae, as much as any leaf, any tree or, any bird. We each as humans. Hawaiians would say, we're not the last thing to show up on the planet. We were the first thing. We were the first single-cell organisms. That's why we're as naughty as we are now, because we've been holding a lot of sin. So it's like, we're just celebrating being here with everyone else, with everything else. As my grandfather used to say to me, he said, everybody in the world is Hawaiian. They just forgot about it. Time to remember. That's all. Time to remember. We all belong. Aloha. What comes first is the breath of life. Right? Akua. We don't have to worry about who you think the great creator is. Right? It's really unimportant. You and me don't have to argue whether that's a big blue bull or the banded snake or the dancing Shiva. Who cares? You and me, aloha. First, we're here. First, it's like, that's the first thing. The other thing, we'll catch up with it later. Whatever it is that you think is behind us. That's why we call the great creation Akua. Kua means you're back. So it's sort of like when they ask us, what do we call God? We go, Akua. Whatever you think is behind this. And it's like, whatever's back there, boo, whatever's going on. And so right there in 2 words, aloha, akua. 2 words we teach our 2-year-olds. Alo means front. Ha means the breath of life. Because that's the last thing all humans say when they leave the planet. It don't matter if they're short or tall or fat, skinny, rich, poor, whatever color. They all go like this. And we go, whoa. Okay, maybe that thing is called the ha, because that's what they all say. It don't even matter what language they speak. So we say aloha first. What comes first is you're still breathing. That's what that means, aloha. Why is that important? It doesn't even have gender. Right? It doesn't talk about station, my lord. There's no station. There's not even gender. And then that is 45% of the wars in the world. 45% of the conflicts are, who the fuck are you? Right, that's 45% of the wars in the world. Say what? We eliminate that right from the first word. Aloha. There's no difference between you and me. We're both breathing, right? Still alive. That's a good thing. The second word, akua, that's another 45% of the wars in the world. So in the first 2 words, we take that away. I don't have to argue with you about who you are. You're still breathing. Fabulous. We're both still alive. Who do you think made all this? Who gives a shit? We're both still alive. Right? It's like, bang. 90% of the wars in the world, gone. The other 10%, that's your mother-in-law and the badly behaved shoe salesman. What are you going to do about that? There's nothing you can do about that. It's bad fashion. Those we got to negotiate as line items.
Yeah.
Which we do. We develop methodology for conflict, which I teach, to deal with that 10%. What I'm suggesting, the world refuses to deal with the first 90%.
Our sameness and our separation.
You and I now will, we'll be seen as bleeding heart liberals, except you're the female one and I'm the male one, right? Or however they pay it, right? They'll find some way to dissect you and me down into something else, right? We won't get to be just human. Demographics, statistical analysis, right? Science, it's our way of understanding what we're doing, right? So our logic, rational models play against our social emotional being, We find ourselves circuitous around discussions of philosophy or belief. And I say, the body, the mind, and the spirit all have to learn at once. Right? So we don't really need to argue about the frameworks regarding them. We just know we need to feed the body, the mind, and the spirit. We cannot have institutions or organizations that feed one or the other, or value the body of the laborer, but not his mind, not his spirit. Value the spirit of the congregation, but not their body and what they do to the community, or how they think about. So we cheat ourselves, right? We don't find ourselves in a holistic state or dealing in a holism, as we move. And these are the questions our grandkids are going to have to juggle. I'm hoping to leave them some good juggling balls. Yeah. Grandfather says, "You're only cooking breakfast, boy. You don't get to eat breakfast. You only get to cook breakfast and then set the table, and hopefully someone will come along." He said, "The real story, boy, is the after dinner drinks. So don't get too ahead of yourself. Just make a good breakfast." My grandfather, he was amazing. And it was like, I was like, got it. The hardest thing he told me, he said, if you do your job correctly, no one will remember you are here. They'll think they did it for themselves. And that's the whole point. So I worry a little when I see too many people posturing or rushing to the front to make sure their name is getting published. Or that's not really what matters. What matters is, are the children fed? Right? Are the old people comfortable? Not getting by, but comfortable. Did we plan for diminishing capacity? Can we absorb that as a society? Do we value wisdom and the intergenerational transfer of knowledge? And feeding children, as you know, requires an awful lot of infrastructure and a whole bunch of relationships. So feeding kids ain't easy. And the last thing he told me, he said, the most important thing, make sure the women are unafraid. He said, that's your job, boy. The women should be unafraid. If they are unafraid, they will generally take care of the first two requirements. He said, if the women are afraid, then you tell me, what the hell are the men doing? Right? It was like, and I was like, wow. And tell you the truth, since I've been 18, those three things have served me greatly. I can walk in and use those three as my metric. And I understand the health of any organization immediately. Any organization, institutional, educational, societal, anyone. I look at those three. I look first to the children. Do they look like they're being sustained? Social, emotional feeding, all of it. Is it going on? Can I see the replication of the condition that leads to an advancing of the social group? And then I look immediately to the less capable. So the elderly, the sick, those that are challenged. How is the society treating them? What am I seeing, right? It's like, how do I see accommodation or non-accommodation? Because then I don't care about the platitudes from the governor, because I know what I'm seeing, right? It's like every governor is going to shake my hand and tell me how great the programs are and blah, 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 blah. I want to know what we're seeing. And then the last one takes all of about 6 seconds to decipher, whether the women are afraid or not. And the minute I see that, I know what I'm dealing with. Right. You know what I mean? And then I know where to go. I find the first legit grandmother I can, and we try to figure out how we turn this thing around, right? Because these guys don't understand women and their place in the health of our societies. That they were not actually initiated into leadership as young people, right? Or as my grandfather would say, some of these are just old Hawaiian people. They're not actually elders, boy. Pay attention. It's like, you know, and it's true, right? And you see this entitlement. They will shun and demean the white man in the room for his entitled attitude, while all the rest of them line up for their entitled treatment because they feel they're over 55. So now they're going to be the entitled brown guys in the room and black guys, and demanding an ill-deserved respect. Nothing could be more damaging to our young people than to see the falseness of that. It's demoralizing. I know it was for me when I was 7, 8, 11, to look up and see irresponsible leadership. It's not that we're without sin. It's just that we can't carry it anymore. You get to this place of I can't lie anymore. I can't do it one more time. It's like, we've got to change it. I'm talking and talking. I should be
great. No, you're great. I'm so grateful for you letting me spend your time, and you shared so much. And I feel like the way you share is so empowering as just a listener to just feel the medicine of the way you
thank you,
story is so good for the soul.
Thank you. It's not mindless. I know it might appear to be the other people, but it is an actual constructed style, right? The idea is for me to reveal information circuitously and let your mind, rather than throwing facts at you, right? I need to set the context, tell the story so you feel the emotion of why that value set means something, right? And then
no, I sincerely meant it really feels like a transmission versus
thank you.
Well, I think as modern people, we want little bits, right? You just want little bits and you don't get the full medicine.
It is the medicine, right? The transmission is in its entirety.
Yeah.
I'm learning from you as much as you're learning from me. You know what I mean? The transmission is in its entirety. As we do, I'm revealing more, you revealing more to me about me, So it's andragogical. It's moving both ways between us.
The way you're sharing is food, right?
Exactly.
Craving, right?
Like I said, you don't just feed the body. I'm just a poor reflection, right? This whole thing of me getting sick, I'm just trying to do my death well. It's like living in a good way. The human race is a marvelous thing. I'm not going to let people like Donald Trump detract us from the greatness that is the human race. Anyway, I love you, sister. You can call me anytime.
Thank you so much. And blessings for your happiness and well-being. And may you have lots of chocolate and vanilla ice cream.
Yes, ma'am. That's my favorite. And I'll go with any blessing anytime. And I'm serious when I say call me anytime. You want to come up the driveway, you're more than welcome.
Oh, same here. You can call me anytime too. And I'll take
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.